The private wing of Lenox Hill Hospital smelled of money and disinfectant. Roger Harrison checked his $80,000 Patek Philippe for the 10th time. His girlfriend, Chloe, a wisp of a woman half his age, was whining about a twisted ankle from a Soul Cycle class. He was about to tell his concierge to handle it when he saw them. His ex-wife, Elena. And she wasn't just Elena. She was visibly, unmistakably pregnant. The man whose hand rested protectively on the small of her back was Matthias Mendez. In that instant, Roger Harrison's meticulously constructed world fractured. Roger Harrison didn't just live in New York, he owned it. Or at least, he owned the parts that mattered. The soaring glass towers that scraped the sky, the pre-war penthouses overlooking the park, the very air of exclusivity that the city breathed. At 52, he was a titan of real estate, a man who saw the skyline as his personal chessboard. He didn't just buy buildings, he acquired them, dominated them, and bent them to his will. He treated people the same way. His companion, Chloe, was his latest acquisition. She was 24, with the curated beauty of an Instagram filter and a laugh that tinkled like ice in a crystal glass. He had found her working at a gallery in Chelsea and had curated her life, moving her from a cramped walk-up to a high-rise he owned, trading her canvas tote for a Birkin. She was beautiful, uncomplicated, and most importantly, she reflected his own power back at him. Her emergency today was a dramatic tumble from a stationary bike, and Roger was indulging it because the disruption annoyed him less than her pouting would. He was scrolling through market reports, his thumb moving with ruthless efficiency, when a shift in the atmosphere made him look up, and there she was, Elena. It wasn't the Elena he remembered. The Elena he had discarded was a creature of sensible wools and quiet evenings. She was the comfortable wife, the partner who had helped him build his first billion, the mother of his 2 college-aged children. The woman he had systematically, cruelly broken in a divorce that had been his masterpiece of legal warfare. He had expected her to crumble, to retreat to the sprawling Connecticut estate he had generously given her, a beautiful prison he no longer wished to inhabit, and fade into a quiet life of gardening and regret. This woman was radiant. She was dressed in a simple, obscenely expensive-looking cream cashmere dress that clung to a figure that was lean, strong, and undeniably pregnant. Her hair, which she had always worn in a practical, mousy brown bob, was now a rich chestnut, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore no makeup, save for a hint of color on her lips, and she looked devastating. She looked happy. The shock was a physical blow, winding him. But the second blow landed a millisecond later. The man with her, Matthias Mendez. If Roger Harrison was old money muscle, Mendez was new money surgical precision. The titan of tech and finance, the one man in the city whose net worth was a subject of frantic speculation and whose influence was spreading like wildfire. Mendez was younger, sharper, a Silicon Valley predator who had decided Manhattan was his new hunting ground. Roger hated him. He hated his quiet confidence, his dismissiveness of the old guard, and the fact that he couldn't be bought or bullied, and this man, this force of nature, was leaning in close to Elena, his expression one of rapt attention. He listened as she spoke, his eyes never leaving her face, and then he laughed, a genuine, warm sound that filled the sterile space. He reached out and gently touched her hand. It was a gesture of such easy intimacy that a spear of pure, unadulterated jealousy lanced through Roger's heart. "Ricky, what is it?" Chloe's voice, usually a soothing balm, was now an irritating buzz. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "In a way," Roger murmured, his eyes locked on the couple. "I have," The narrative he had so carefully crafted for himself began to unravel. Eleanor, the discarded wife, the relic of his past, was not supposed to be here, in the heart of his kingdom, looking like a goddess, and carrying the child of the one man who could eclipse his own power. The hunter, surveying his domain, had just realized he was not the only predator in the jungle, and the prey he thought he had left for dead was now thriving. The Maybach was silent on the drive back from the hospital, save for Chloe's incessant nervous chatter about the doctor, her ankle, and a gala she wanted to attend. Roger heard none of it. His mind was a slideshow of horrors, playing one image on a loop. Eleanor. Pregnant. His entire world was built on control. He controlled the market, he controlled his image, and he had, he thought, controlled the narrative of his divorce. He remembered their last real conversation, not the sterile pronouncements from lawyers, but the last raw, desperate fight. They were in the library of the Connecticut estate. Elena was 44. Their children, Mark and Sophie, were heading to college. "I want to try for one more, Roger," she had said, her voice quiet but firm. "We're not old. We have everything. I feel like there's one more piece missing." Roger had looked at her as if she were insane. "One more? Are you kidding? We're done. The kids are out. This is our time. My time. I'm not starting over with diapers and 2 a.m. feedings. The life we have is perfect. You are perfect. Don't ruin it." When she had pushed, he had become cruel. He'd suggested she was past her expiration date, that her body probably couldn't handle it anyway. He'd said he was the one who was still vital, and he didn't want to be tied down. The affair with a 22-year-old intern had started a month later. He wasn't even discreet. He wanted Elena to find out. He wanted to prove his point, to show her that he was still a king, and she was just a domestic creature holding him back. The divorce had been a masterpiece of psychological warfare. He had been generous with the settlement, a sum so large it was meant to be an insult, a message that she and their 25 years together had a price tag, and he could easily afford it. He had taken her dignity, expecting her to crumble, and for 2 years, it seemed she had. Silence. His children reported she was fine, a word so bland it confirmed his assumptions. She was in Connecticut, tending her roses, her spirit as pruned and contained as her beloved hydrangeas. Now that pruned woman was pregnant with another man's child, a powerful man's child. The pregnancy was a direct refutation of his entire narrative. It wasn't just that she had moved on. It was that she had obtained the one thing he had explicitly forbidden her from having. It was a declaration of war. "Ricky, you haven't heard a word I've said," Chloe snapped, her voice finally cutting through his fog as they stepped into the sterile, cavernous expanse of his penthouse. "It's nothing, Chloe. Just a business thing," he lied, loosening his tie. "Business? You looked like you were going to be sick. Who was that woman?" Chloe, for all her curated vacuity, was a survivor. She could smell a threat. She looked old, but pretty, and pregnant. "She's my ex-wife," Roger said, pouring a vodka. "Neat." Chloe's perfectly sculpted brows shot up. "Your ex? The one in Connecticut? I thought you said she was, fragile." "Apparently," Roger said, downing the vodka in one fiery gulp. "I was mistaken." He looked out at the city, his city, glittering below. But the lights no longer looked like jewels. They looked like the cold, mocking eyes of an audience that had just watched him play the fool. The memory of the hospital scene replayed, but Roger forced himself to analyze it, not just feel it. The way Mendez stood, protective, the way Elena looked at him, not with the fawning adoration of a woman like Chloe, but with the steady gaze of an equal. He had to confront them. He couldn't just stand there. Back in the hospital, 30 minutes earlier, Roger had left Chloe in the examination room, growling something about making a call, and strode back to the private waiting area. They were still there, leafing through a magazine, talking quietly. Eleanor. She looked up. Her eyes met his. And in that fraction of a second, Roger saw everything he had lost. There was no pain, no anger, no lingering affection. There was nothing but a cool, unreadable composure. It was the calm, polite neutrality one might afford a distant acquaintance, and that, more than any outburst, gutted him. "Roger," she said, her voice as smooth and cool as polished marble. It was the first time she had spoken his name in over 2 years. Matias Mendez stood, not aggressively, but with the unhurried grace of a man who owned every room he entered. He was taller than Roger remembered, with a sharp, intelligent face that held no fear. He simply extended a hand. "Harrison." His voice was even. Roger was forced to take it. The handshake was firm, dry, a simple exchange that felt like a gauntlet being thrown down. I was surprised to see you here," Roger stammered, hating the weakness in his own voice. "I have an appointment," Elena said simply, her hand resting on the swell of her belly. The gesture was both unconscious and deliberate. A statement. Before Roger could formulate a response, Chloe limped out of the exam room, her face a mask of petulant fury. "Ricky, what's going on? Who are these people?" The class distinction was immediate and brutal. Chloe, in her neon yellow Lululemon set, looked like a child's toy next to Elena's quiet, devastating elegance. Elena's gaze flickered to Chloe, taking in the entire tableau, the youth, the desperation, the obvious transactional nature of the relationship. A ghost of a smile, enigmatic and faintly amused, touched her lips. A nurse appeared at the door, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Harrison, Dr. Chen is ready for you." Ms. Harrison. The name hit Roger like a physical blow. She had kept his name. After everything, she had kept his name. He felt a sudden, bizarre surge of triumph. She was still his. Elena nodded at the nurse, then gave a small, polite nod to Roger. "Roger." It was a dismissal. She and Mendez turned and walked down the hall, Mendez's hand once again settling on the small of her back. Roger stood frozen, the blood pounding in his temples. She had kept his name. Why? Was it a message? A lingering attachment? He was so lost in this small victory that he missed the larger, more terrifying implication. He felt Chloe's hand on his arm. "Ricky, let's go. People are staring." He looked at her, but he saw only a pale, cheap imitation of the woman who had just walked away. The woman who was carrying another man's child, but was still, inexplicably, Ms. Harrison. The slam of the penthouse door echoed in the cavernous, empty space. Chloe had been seething with a silent fury the entire ride home. Now, she exploded. "You humiliated me!" she shrieked, tearing off her jacket. "You stood there staring at that woman like she was the queen and I was some trash you'd dragged in." "Lower your voice, Chloe," Roger said, walking to the bar. He was done with her. Done with her manufactured drama, her petty insecurities. "No, I won't. Who the hell is she? And why is she pregnant? And why did she look at me like that? Like I was nothing?" "She is my ex-wife," Roger snapped, the ice clinking violently as he poured a drink. "And she's pregnant, obviously. As for the rest, it's none of your goddamn business." "None of my business?" Chloe laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "I am your business, Roger. I'm the one you take to galas, the one you show off, and you just let her waltz in and make you look like a fool." "She didn't do anything," Roger growled, turning to face her. She just existed. "Oh, that's rich," Chloe shot back, her eyes narrowing. For the first time, Roger saw a glimpse of the hard, calculating woman beneath the bubble-headed facade. "It didn't look like nothing, Ricky. The way you looked at her. I've never seen you look at me like that. You look at me like I'm a prize. You looked at her like she was the one who won." "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed. But the words lacked conviction. Her observation was too close to the bone. "And him," she continued, her voice rising. "Matias Mendez. I read page 6, Roger. The one person in this city who doesn't seem to be intimidated by you. She left you, and she's with him. And she's pregnant. That's what's really eating you, isn't it? It's not about her. It's about your ego. It's about him." Her words were a slap in the face, a brutal, unwelcome truth. He whirled around, his eyes blazing. "You don't know what you're talking about. You know nothing about my life, about my marriage. I know what I see." Chloe's voice was now a furious shout. "I see a man who thought he could just discard a woman like an old suit and is now having a meltdown because she dared to find happiness with someone else. Someone better." The word better was a poisoned dart. "Get out," Roger said, his voice low and dangerous. "What?" "I said, get out," he roared, pointing a trembling finger toward the door. "Go back to your little apartment that I pay for, with the clothes I bought you, and leave me alone." Tears of rage and humiliation welled in Chloe's eyes. She stared at him for a long moment, her beautiful face a mask of fury. "You know what, Roger? For the first time, I actually feel sorry for her. She escaped. I'm just living in the prison she broke out of." With that, she turned on her heel, snatched her purse from the counter, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her with a resounding crash that seemed to shake the entire penthouse. Left alone in the cavernous room, Roger sank onto a leather sofa, the anger draining out of him, leaving behind a cold, heavy dread. Chloe was right. His rage was fueled by a toxic cocktail of wounded pride, jealousy, and, most terrifyingly, a dawning sense of his own obsolescence. Mendez was the future. He was the past. Elena's alliance with him felt like a definitive statement on his own relevance. His mind, conditioned for decades to treat every problem as a business challenge, immediately began to strategize. He needed information. He needed leverage. He needed to understand the dynamics of this new reality so he could find a way to disrupt it. Roger's fingers flew across his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. It belonged to a man named Harris Vance, a private investigator who operated in the gray areas of the law, a specialist in digging up the kind of dirt that could ruin reputations and topple empires. Vance was expensive, discreet, and utterly without scruples. "Vance!" a gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "It's Harrison." There was a slight pause. "Roger, it's been a long time. I trust you're not calling to reminisce. I need information, Harris, on 2 people. My ex-wife, Elena Harrison." "Harrison? She kept the name?" Vance sounded intrigued. "She kept the name," Roger confirmed, the words tasting like ash. "And a man named Matias Mendez. Mendez of Oracor, flying high these days. What do you want to know?" "Everything," Roger said, his voice a low growl. "Their relationship. How they met. How long. The pregnancy. I want to know everything about it. Is it his? Is it even real? I want a timeline." He paced the length of his penthouse, the glass walls reflecting a man he barely recognized, agitated, desperate. "And her," he continued. "I want to know what she's been doing for the past 2 years, every detail. I want to know her friends, where she goes, what she eats. I want to know her." He wanted to understand the woman she had become, the woman who had captivated a man like Mendez. He needed to find the chink in her armor, the weakness he could exploit. And Mendez, Roger said, a cold, calculating thought slipping into his mind. I want his business, his financials, his deals, his vulnerabilities. Find me something I can use. Find me something I can break. That's a deep dive, Roger, on two very high-profile, very protected targets. It'll be expensive. I don't care about the cost, Roger said, his gaze fixed on the city skyline. I want it done, and I want it done quietly. You know me, Roger. Quiet is my middle name. After hanging up, Roger felt a sliver of his old control returning. He was taking action, seizing the initiative. But as he looked out at the sprawling city, a new, unsettling thought began to form. Why had she kept his name? It was a mystery that grated on him more than the pregnancy itself. He had thrown her away, publicly humiliated her, and she still clung to his name? It didn't make sense, unless it was a weapon, a way of reminding the world, and him, that she was, and always would be, the real Mrs. Harrison. A title a 24-year-old mistress could never claim. The thought was both repulsive and strangely thrilling. If she wanted to play a game, he would play. But he played to win. A week later, a plain black envelope arrived at Roger's private office. Inside was a slim USB drive. Roger dismissed his assistant, locked his door, and slid the drive into his laptop. The screen populated with files, surveillance photos, and a detailed summary from Harris Vance. He clicked on the summary, his heart pounding. The report began with Eleanor. After the divorce, she hadn't crumbled. She had liquidated. She had sold the Connecticut estate, the prison he'd given her, for a staggering profit. She had sold the jewelry he'd bought her, the art, the cars. She had quietly, systematically erased every trace of his life from hers. Then she had vanished from the society pages. But she hadn't been tending roses. She had used her settlement and her rarely used maiden name, Davies, to create a venture capital fund. Davies Innovative Ventures. She hadn't started a fluffy non-profit. She had become a shark. Vance's report detailed how she had spent 2 years flying under the radar, attending biotech and medical tech conferences, not as a socialite, but as an investor. She had leveraged her quiet intelligence, the very thing Roger had found so unexciting, to identify and fund a dozen small, brilliant and struggling startups. Then came the part he was truly waiting for, her connection to Matthias Mendez. They hadn't met at a gala. They had met in a boardroom, where they were both bidding on the same obscure patent for a data processing algorithm. Mendez had been impressed by her strategy. Their relationship, Vance wrote, was built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared interests. And the pregnancy? Vance's source was inside the hospital. Elena was pregnant. It was a high-risk pregnancy, given her age, but she was healthy. And the father, according to the intake forms, was unknown. A donor. Roger felt a sour taste in his mouth. She hadn't just replaced him. She had made him irrelevant. She had decided she didn't need a man at all to get the one thing she wanted. The one thing he had denied her. He turned his attention to the files on Mendez. The financials were, as expected, astronomical. Auracor was a juggernaut. But Vance had dug deeper, and there he found it. Mendez was in the final, secret stages of a high-stakes acquisition of a smaller, publicly traded medical tech firm called Biostat Dynamics. The deal was worth billions and would solidify Auracor's dominance in the healthcare AI space. Biostat held key patents for predictive diagnostic software. The deal was Mendez's passion project, the keystone of his long-term strategy. Roger leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He knew that name. He barked at his internal computer, Open portfolio, legacy holdings. He scanned the list. And there it was. Vanderbilt Holdings owned an 8% stake in Biostat Dynamics. It was a legacy investment, one he hadn't paid attention to in years. But 8% was more than enough. A cold, brilliant idea began to form in his mind. As a major shareholder, he could disrupt the acquisition. He could file an injunction, raise objections about the valuation, demand a federal antitrust review, rally other shareholders, and tie the deal up in a quagmire of legal and financial complications. He could make Mendez's life a living hell. He could bleed him, distract him, and maybe even kill the deal altogether. It was the perfect revenge. It wasn't a direct attack on Elena, which would be messy and make him look petty. This was business. It was a move on the corporate battlefield, a world he understood and dominated. It would hit Mendez where he was most vulnerable, his ambition, his legacy, and Elena, with her high-risk pregnancy, would be caught in the crossfire. Her newfound happiness would be inextricably linked to the fortunes of a man he was about to bring to his knees. The plan was audacious, ruthless, and deeply satisfying. He was no longer the passive, humiliated observer in the hospital. He was Roger Harrison, the puppet master, and he was about to start pulling the strings. Roger didn't just pull the string, he tried to snap it. Within 48 hours, he had his legal team file a motion. It was a masterpiece of corporate aggression disguised as shareholder concern. It alleged that the AuraCore offer for Biostat Dynamics grossly undervalued the company's future potential and demanded a full, independent audit and a new, open bidding process. The financial news media exploded. AuraCore's stock dipped. Mendez's sure thing was suddenly in jeopardy. Roger sat back in his office, a rare, genuine smile on his face. He felt the familiar, intoxicating rush of control. He had made his move. Now, he waited for Mendez to crawl to him. It took less than a day. Mendez's assistant requested an urgent private meeting. Roger made him wait another 24 hours. When Mendez was finally shown into Roger's boardroom, a cavernous space with a 30-foot mahogany table and a staggering view of Central Park, he was alone. He wasn't flustered or angry. He was calm, carrying a slim leather portfolio. This lack of visible panic annoyed Roger more than any outburst would have. "An impressive view, Harrison," Mendez began, his voice calm, resonant. He didn't sit. "It's easy to feel like a god from up here. But you have to be careful. The heights can make you forget what's happening on the ground." "I'm a busy man, Mendez," Roger said, steepling his fingers. "I assume you're here about Biostat." "I am," Mendez replied, finally taking a seat, uninvited. "Your motion is creative, a lot of impressive legal jargon to say you want to cause trouble." "I have a fiduciary duty to my shareholders," Roger recited, the words feeling hollow even to him. "Your offer is low. I believe a competitive bidding process will yield a higher return." "It's just business." Mendez met his gaze, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence, Roger. This isn't about business, and we both know it. You've held that 8% stake for a decade and haven't attended a single shareholder meeting. Your own analysts recommended divesting it 2 years ago. Your sudden, passionate concern for its valuation appeared exactly 48 hours after you saw me at Lenox Hill with Elena. The directness of the attack was jarring. Roger had expected a dance, a series of feints and parries. Mendez had simply walked to the center of the ring and thrown a haymaker. "This has nothing to do with my ex-wife," Roger snapped, his face flushing. "And I would advise you to leave her out of this." "I can't," Mendez said, his voice losing its light edge and taking on the hardness of forged steel. "Because she is the entire reason for this conversation. You saw her looking happy and you couldn't stand it. You couldn't attack her directly. That would look petty, even for you. So you came after me. You are arrogant and presumptuous, Roger spat. You waltz into my city, my world, and you think you understand me? You think you understand the woman I was married to for 25 years? No, Mendez conceded, leaning forward. I don't pretend to understand the man you are, but I have spent the last 18 months getting to know the woman you threw away. And you are making the grave mistake of underestimating her. You see, you think this is your game. Your table? He gestured to the mahogany expanse between them. You're wrong. He reached into his portfolio and slid a single file across the polished surface. It stopped directly in front of Roger. What is this? It's the biostat capitalization table, Mendez said. The full one. The one your lawyers clearly didn't get. Roger opened it. He scanned the list of major shareholders. Vanderbilt Holdings, 8%. A few hedge funds. And then, at the top, Davies Innovative Ventures, 42%. Roger's blood turned to ice. What is this? That, Mendez said, is Elena. It turns out Biostat was one of her first and largest investments. She saw its potential 3 years ago, when it was nearly bankrupt. She personally funded the R&D that led to the patents I'm now trying to acquire. She built this company, Roger. Roger's mind was reeling. He hadn't just fired a warning shot at his rival. He had declared war on his ex-wife. She's the largest shareholder, Roger whispered, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. This is her payday you're trying to block. It is, Mendez confirmed. And here's the masterstroke. You're not just blocking a deal. You're blocking her, and you're doing it using her name. What are you talking about? The nurse, Roger, at the hospital. She called her Ms. Harrison. You thought she'd kept your name, didn't you? A little trophy for your ego. Mendez shook his head. Elena hasn't used your name in 2 years. Legally, she is Elena Davies. The nurse was new. She saw the name Harrison on my visitor's pass and made an assumption. The small victory Roger had clung to evaporated. But that's not the real checkmate, Mendez said, leaning in. You need to understand why Elena built this company. Roger stared at the document, his world tilting on its axis. What? What do you mean? Why? You assumed Elena was just a savvy investor, Mendez said, his voice softening slightly. You were wrong. This was never about the money for her. It was about this. He slid a second file across the table. It wasn't a financial report. It was a medical journal, The Lancet, opened to a peer-reviewed study. The title was Monoclonal Antibody Therapy as a Revolutionary Treatment for Uterine Receptivity Failure. The lead author, Dr. Aris Thorne. The funding source, Davies Innovative Ventures. You remember your divorce, Roger? Mendez asked, his voice quiet. You remember telling Elena she was past her expiration date? That her body couldn't handle another child? Roger flinched, the memory of his own cruelty hitting him. She went to doctors, your doctors, on your payroll at your hospital, and they all told her the same thing. Unexplained infertility, early menopause, hopeless. They told her she was broken. Mendez tapped the journal. Elena didn't believe them. She believed in science. She used her settlement to find the one doctor, Dr. Thorne, who believed he could fix it. A brilliant man whose research was considered too radical. She didn't just fund his research, Roger. She built biostat dynamics around him. The diagnostic software you're trying to block? It's the AI that identifies the exact protein deficiency he needed to target. The patents aren't just for software. They're for a cure. The room was silent. Roger felt the air leave his lungs. And the pregnancy? Roger whispered, already knowing the answer. Elena wasn't just the investor, Mendez said, a note of profound respect in his voice. She was patient zero. She put her own body on the line to prove her science worked. The baby she's carrying, it's not mine. It's not a donor's in the way you think. It's hers. Her egg, fertilized in vitro before the divorce, one you told her to get rid of. She saved it. She spent 2 years building the technology to give her own child a home. Roger was shattered. He had tried to destroy a woman, only to find out she was a force of nature. He had assumed her pregnancy was an act of defiance against him. He was wrong. It was an act of creation, an act of sheer, unadulterated will. So you see, Mendez continued, my acquisition of Biostat isn't just a business deal. It's the launch pad for a medical revolution. We are going to take this technology global. We are going to help millions of women who were told they were broken. The trap was sprung. The genius of it was breathtaking in its cruelty. If Roger pursued his attack, he wasn't just a bitter corporate raider. He would be the man who personally, publicly, and maliciously destroyed the life's work of his ex-wife, the cure she had invented, the child she was carrying. He would be torpedoing a medical miracle, all to soothe his bruised ego. He was checkmated, utterly and completely. What do you want? Roger asked, his voice a dry rasp he barely recognized as his own. The bravado, the anger, it had all evaporated, leaving only the cold, stark reality of his defeat. It's simple, Mendez said. You will call your lawyers, and you will withdraw the motion. You will vote your 8% in favor of the sale, and then you will walk away. You will leave Elena, her child, and her company alone. Roger sat motionless. He looked at the journal, at the name Davies, a name now synonymous with vision and progress. Finally, with a slow, crushing exhalation, he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Fine. The word was the epitaph of his reign. Mendez stood, his objective achieved. He collected his files, his movements crisp and efficient. He walked to the door but paused with his hand on the handle, turning back to face the broken man at the head of the table. You know, Roger, he said, in all the time I've known Eleanor, I've never once heard her speak ill of you. Roger looked up, stunned. She doesn't talk about the divorce. She doesn't talk about your cruelty. She talks about your early years, about the ambition she once admired. She says you gave her 2 wonderful children, Mark and Sophie. Mendez let that detail land. By the way, they're both on the junior board of Davies Ventures. They're immensely proud of what their mother is building. That was the final, unseen blow. He hadn't just lost his wife. He had lost his children. They hadn't just left him. They had chosen her. They had chosen a future she was building over a past he represented. She found her own purpose, Roger, Mendez said, his voice softened with something that might have been pity. I sincerely suggest you try to find one for yourself, because this empty room and your stock portfolio, it's not a legacy. It's just a balance sheet. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the cavernous, silent boardroom. Roger Harrison remained in his chair, a solitary figure dwarfed by the symbols of his own hollow empire. The city glittered on, indifferent. He had sought to orchestrate a drama of power and revenge, but had instead been cast as the tragic, obsolete fool in a story of rebirth and triumph. He was Roger Harrison, the man who had everything, and he had never felt so poor. The fallout was quiet, but seismic. The motion was withdrawn. The acquisition of Biostat Dynamics by AuraCore went through, creating a new medical powerhouse. A month later, Forbes magazine hit the stands. The cover wasn't a tech bro or a hedge fund king. It was Elena Davies Harrison, holding her newborn daughter, Livia. The headline, Patient Zero, How Elena Harrison Turned a $100 million divorce settlement into a $4 billion medical revolution. Roger saw the cover in an airport lounge. He was alone. Chloe was long gone. His children weren't returning his calls. He looked at the photo of the woman he had underestimated, the woman who had taken his name and his money and built a legacy, while he was left with just a name. He had tried to put her in a box, and she had responded by redesigning the entire world of medicine. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost a war he hadn't even known he was fighting. What happens when a man who has everything realizes he has nothing of value? This story is a glimpse into that brutal awakening. Roger Harrison learned that true power isn't about control, it's about creation. Elena didn't just get revenge, she got redemption, building a new life and a new legacy from the ashes of the old. If you were captivated by this tale of resilience, justice, and the ultimate triumph of a life well lived, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a story where the right person wins. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. What do you think Roger should do next? Let us know in the comments below.